The war between humans and the Shirathi had ended in fire, silence, and uneasy peace. For years, both sides had spilled blood across stars, destroying fleets and shattering worlds. Now the weapons were put aside, though the wounds had not healed. Among the ruins of this fragile truce stood Daniel Cole, a soldier who had seen too much death. He had expected retirement, maybe peace at last, but fate led him somewhere stranger than war. The Shirathi were not like humans. They were tall, strong, and radiant in a way that made even the most decorated human generals feel small. Their skin shimmered with strange hues, greens, blues, silver-like patterns that seemed alive. When treaties were signed, humans and Shirathi agreed to exchange not just goods but families. It was a way to ensure peace. Daniel had been chosen, or perhaps forced, to represent humanity in this bond. The elders said he had survived too much to return to a normal life. Instead, he would marry a Shirathi wife, one of their leader's daughters, and become a symbol of unity. Her name was Serenia. She was fierce, proud, and beautiful in a way that unsettled him. Her emerald skin glowed under the firelight, and her silver hair fell like a river of light. When she looked at him, it was not with warmth but with the fire of challenge. She was not like the human women he remembered from Earth. She was a warrior, and warriors did not bow their heads. At first, Daniel thought she would never accept him. The wedding was silent, marked only by the cold stares of her people and the whispers of his own. But days passed, and something strange grew between them. She never softened, but she did not ignore him. They shared meals. They sparred in training halls. They sat in silence beneath the alien skies. When at last she told him she would bear his child, it was not with tenderness, but with a demand. For peace, she said. For strength. Months later, when their child was born, Daniel felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. The infant was small, delicate, a perfect blend of human and Shirathi blood. Daniel held the child in his arms, his rough hands trembling as he whispered promises he had never spoken aloud before. He thought Serenia would be proud. He thought this would be enough, but when he presented the child to her people, Serenia's eyes blazed with fury. She stood tall before him, her armor catching the glow of the great hall's torches, and her voice shook the chamber. "One?" She spat. "Just one? That is not enough. We need 15. Her words struck Daniel like a blade. The hall went silent, filled only with the hiss of burning braziers. Every elder, every warrior, every alien mother turned their gaze on him. 15. He could barely understand. He had given them life, a bridge between their races, but to her, it was not enough. "Do you not see?" Serenia roared, pointing at him with a trembling hand. "Our enemies still breathe. Our bloodlines still weaken. One child cannot protect us. One child cannot stand against what is coming. 15, human. You will give me 15. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked down at the tiny life in his arms, the small face that had barely opened its eyes. He wanted to argue, to say that one child was a miracle, that peace did not need an army of heirs. But Serenia's people did not see miracles. They saw survival, legacy, power. The crowd stirred, whispers rising like a storm. Some shouted in approval. Others muttered doubts about human weakness. Serenia's demand was not just a wife's request, it was a challenge before her entire people. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. Anger at her words, at this world that asked too much of him, but also at himself. Because deep inside, he knew she was not only speaking as his wife. She was speaking as a leader, as someone who carried the burden of an entire people on her shoulders. She was asking him not for one family, but for a future. The silence stretched until Daniel finally lifted his gaze to hers. The hall seemed to fade, the fire dimmed, and for a moment it was only him and her, human and alien, husband and wife. He did not speak. His silence was an answer in itself. Serena's eyes narrowed, but for the first time, her voice softened, almost breaking. Do not fail me, human. Do not fail us all. Daniel's grip tightened on the child. He felt the weight of 15 lives pressing on him before the first had even drawn breath. The war had ended, but another had just begun, one within his own home, his own heart. And this battle, he realized, might be the hardest of them all. The silence in the hall lingered long after Serena's demand. Daniel carried the newborn back to their chamber, his mind filled with her voice echoing over and over. 15. She wanted 15 children. The number itself was like a mountain pressing on his shoulders. He had survived wars, battles against impossible odds, but this was a different kind of weight. In the quiet room, he laid the child in a cradle carved from alien stone. The baby stirred softly, unaware of the storm it had been born into. Daniel sat beside the cradle, his hand resting on the edge. He remembered the faces of fallen comrades, men and women who would never know the warmth of holding a child. He whispered to the small being, "One is enough. For me, but not for her." The door opened. Serena entered, her presence filling the chamber. She wore no armor now, only a simple robe, yet she still looked like a queen prepared for battle. Her eyes fixed on him, sharp but not cruel. "You think I am greedy," she said without pretense. Daniel did not answer. "You think I demand too much," she continued, stepping closer. "But you do not understand the Shirathi. Our bloodlines are thinning. The war took too many of us. Our enemies count our children, and they laugh at how few we have left. A single child is a candle in a storm. 15 would be a fire no one can put out." Her words carried no softness, only truth as she saw it. Daniel looked at her, tired yet steady. "I gave you life. I gave you hope. Isn't that enough?" Serena leaned closer, her silver hair falling over her shoulder. "Enough for you, perhaps. Never for us. You are human, Daniel. You come from a world where time feels endless. We do not. If we do not rebuild now, there will be no later." For a moment, the soldier in him wanted to argue, to shout, to resist. But something in her eyes stopped him. Behind her fierce tone, he glimpsed fear. Not fear of him, but of extinction, of losing everything she had sworn to protect. That night Daniel did not sleep. He paced the chamber, watching over the baby, listening to its soft breaths. Outside, the city hummed with alien voices, warriors training, forges glowing. Peace was fragile, and Serena was right. The galaxy was not kind to the weak. But was he strong enough to meet her demand? Was any man? The next day, the council summoned him. The alien hall was filled with elders, their faces painted in silver markings of authority. Serena stood beside them, tall and proud. The eldest of them, a woman with skin dark as obsidian and eyes like burning stars, spoke first. "Human," she said, her voice echoing through the stone chamber. "Your union is not just marriage. It is treaty. It is survival. One child is a promise. 15 will be a future." Daniel stood before them, fists clenched at his sides. "You ask too much," he said. "I am not a machine. I am not a weapon you can point at life itself." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some elders frowned, others nodded. Serena did not speak, but her gaze stayed locked on him, unreadable. The elder raised a hand, silencing the room. "Then you must decide, human. If you cannot give what is needed, the treaty may break. And if it breaks, the war will return." The words hit Daniel harder than any blade. The lives of millions now rested on his choice. One path led to peace, but at a cost he could hardly imagine. The other led to war, blood, and ruin. As he left the chamber, Serena followed him. In the corridor, away from the ears of the council, she touched his arm for the first time since their marriage. Her voice was quieter now, almost pleading. "Do not think of me. Think of them. Think of the child you already hold. Will you let that child grow up in a galaxy at war? Daniel stared at her hand on his arm, then into her eyes. For the first time, he realized she was not just demanding. She was desperate. Her strength was armor, but inside that armor, she feared as much as he did. He walked away without answering. But the question haunted him with every step. Was one child ever enough to stop the shadows of war? The days that followed were filled with whispers. Wherever Daniel walked through the alien city, eyes followed him. The Shirathi mothers looked at him with hope, the warriors with suspicion, and the elders with expectation. He was no longer just a man. He was a promise they demanded he keep, whether he was ready or not. Daniel spent most of his time with the child. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around his own calloused hand, and in those moments, he felt peace. But every time the child's soft cries echoed in the chamber, he remembered Serenya's words. One was not enough. Serenya herself was different now. She still spoke with strength, but Daniel noticed the cracks beneath her steel. At night, when she thought he was asleep, she would sit by the cradle and stare at the baby with eyes full of longing and worry. She wanted 15 not only for her people, but for herself. She wanted to see her bloodline survive. One evening, Daniel was summoned by human envoys who had arrived to monitor the treaty. He entered their temporary quarters, a stark contrast to the glowing alien halls. The commander, an older man with a scarred face, greeted him coldly. "You're causing waves, Cole," the commander said. "The Shirathi expect you to give them an army of children. You know what happens if you fail." Daniel clenched his jaw. "They're asking for the impossible." "Impossible?" The commander snapped. "Peace is built on impossible things. Do you think Earth can afford another war? Millions are counting on you. If their demand is 15, then 15 is what you'll give them." Daniel stared at him, stunned. Even his own people saw him not as a man, but as a tool. He wanted to protest, to tell them he was not a breeding machine. But the commander's words made one thing clear: humanity would not shield him. He was alone in this. When he returned to the alien palace, Serenya was waiting. Her arms were crossed, her silver hair glowing in the torchlight. "They spoke to you, didn't they?" she asked. Daniel sighed. "They told me the same thing you did. That I must give you 15. Serenya's expression softened, but only slightly. "Then you see, it is not only my demand. It is survival. I am not a god," Daniel said quietly. "I am one man. I gave you life once. But how can one man carry the weight of 15 futures?" Serenya stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. "Because you are human. Do you not see? That is why we chose you. We do not ask this of our own men, because they cannot. But you, your kind, is different. Your will is iron. You endure what others cannot. That is why you survived the war. That is why you are here." Her words struck him, not as flattery, but as a challenge. She believed in him, even if it was for reasons he did not understand. Later that night, Daniel walked the city alone. He passed alien children training with wooden spears, their voices filled with determination. He passed widows who still wore the armor of fallen husbands. Everywhere he looked, the weight of expectation pressed down on him. Finally, he stopped at the edge of the city, where the alien plain stretched under a dark sky lit by twin moons. He clenched his fists and whispered to himself, "I survived battlefields no man should. But can I survive this?" Behind him, Serenya appeared, silent as a shadow. She did not speak at first. She simply stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. At last she said, "You think I hate you for resisting. But I don't. I fear what will happen if you refuse. To me, to our child, to all of us." Daniel turned to her, seeing her not as a queen or a warrior, but as a woman who carried the weight of her people. For the first time since their union, he reached for her hand. She did not pull away. I don't know if I can give you 15, he admitted. But I will not abandon you. Not you, not the child, not your people. Serenia looked at him, her fierce eyes softening. Then perhaps one day, one will become enough. But until then, we fight together. For the first time, they stood side by side, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as partners in a war that had no battlefield, only hearts and futures. Asterisk, the fragile bond between Daniel and Serenia grew in silence, but the galaxy refused to stay quiet. Rumors spread across both human and alien worlds. Some called Daniel a savior, the man who could unite two species through blood. Others mocked him as nothing more than a prisoner, chained to an impossible duty. It wasn't long before the first outside threat appeared. Scouts reported strange movements near the border raiders, mercenaries, perhaps even remnants of the old enemy. The Shirathi Council met in secret, but nothing stayed hidden for long. Daniel heard whispers in the corridors, saw the fear on faces that once glared at him with only suspicion. Peace was a thin shield, and it was already cracking. One evening, as the twin moons hung low over the alien city, Serenia stood before Daniel with her armor strapped tight. "If war returns, we will not survive with one child," she said. "Our enemies will see weakness. They will come for us." Daniel studied her, his jaw set. "You want me to fight this war in the cradle. But if danger comes, I will fight it with my hands." Her gaze hardened. "And when you fall, who will remain? Children are not only heirs. They are shields, proof that we cannot be erased. Every child is a blade against extinction." The words weighed heavy on him. He wanted to believe strength alone could protect them, but Serenia's logic was as sharp as her spear. She had been raised in a world where survival meant numbers, and numbers meant safety. Days later, a council gathering was called. Both humans and Shirathi filled the great hall, banners of both races hanging side by side. But unity was thin. Arguments rose quickly, human envoys demanding restraint, alien elders demanding urgency. Daniel stood beside Serenia, the baby in his arms. Voices clashed like swords until one of the human officers pointed a finger directly at him. "There is your answer. One child is not a treaty. It is a beginning. If he cannot give what is required, this peace will collapse before it has even started." Murmurs filled the chamber. Serenia's people nodded. Daniel's own people avoided his eyes. For the first time, he realized they all agreed on one thing. His life was no longer his own. The council ended in chaos. As Daniel returned to his quarters, Serenia followed close behind. He placed the child in the cradle, then turned to her, his anger boiling. "Do you see what they've done?" He said, "To them, I am not a man. I am not even a husband. I am a tool, a machine to give them heirs. They do not care about me, Serenia. Not even my own people." For a moment, Serenia's face softened. She stepped forward, her hand brushing his shoulder. "I care. Do not think I see you only as a vessel. I see you as a warrior who carries more than most could bear. But if you give up, if you refuse, the galaxy will not wait. Our enemies will not wait. And then this child you hold will have no tomorrow." Her voice cracked at the end, so faint he almost didn't hear it. For once, she wasn't demanding. She was pleading. Daniel looked into her eyes and saw something deeper than pride or anger. He saw fear, not for herself, but for the small life that tied them together. In that moment, he understood. Her demand for 15 was not born of greed, but of desperation. The night stretched long. Daniel sat awake, his thoughts torn. He had carried rifles, worn armor, fought for worlds that weren't his. Now the fight was different. No bullets, no blood. Only choices that could decide the survival of two species. At dawn, he stood at the balcony of their chamber. The city below prepared for battle, soldiers training in the courtyards, forges glowing with fire. Serenia joined him, her armor gleaming in the rising light. He turned to her, his voice steady. If war comes, I will fight. If peace demands heirs, I will try. But Serenia, do not think I do this for councils or treaties. I do this for you. For the child. For the future we did not choose, but must protect. For the first time, Serenia's lips curved into something like a smile, faint but real. She placed her hand on his chest and whispered, "Then perhaps, human, we are not enemies after all." The threat came sooner than anyone expected. Scouts returned battered and bloodied, reporting enemy ships slipping past the borders. Raiders, possibly remnants of the war, or mercenaries paid by rival empires, were gathering near the outer colonies. The council demanded immediate action. The humans wanted negotiations, but the Shirathi had no patience for talk. Daniel had fought in wars before, yet this was different. He was no longer only a soldier, he was the symbol of their fragile alliance. If he failed here, no one would remember the child he had given or the promises he had made. They would remember only weakness. Serenia prepared her armor, fastening each piece with steady hands. "You will stay here," she told him, her tone sharp. "The council needs you alive. You are not to fight." Daniel shook his head. "I've fought my whole life. If I stand back now, your warriors will see me as nothing more than a prisoner in my own home. If I fight, they'll know I'm not afraid to bleed beside them." Serenia's eyes narrowed. "And if you fall? If you die before giving us the future we need?" Daniel strapped on a piece of human armor, scarred from past battles. "Then at least they will know I was no coward. And if I live, maybe they'll believe one child is more than enough." The argument ended there. Serenia knew he would not bend. And perhaps, deep down, she wanted to see him fight not as her husband, but as the warrior who had survived every battle the galaxy threw at him. When the raid came, the city roared with alarms. Enemy dropships tore through the sky, fire streaking behind them. Shirathi warriors rushed to the walls, their blades glowing with alien energy. Daniel stood among them, rifle in hand, his breath steady. He had trained for moments like this, though never in a world so far from Earth. The first wave hit hard. Raiders in jagged armor stormed the gates, their weapons shrieking as they clashed with Shirathi steel. Serenia fought at the front, her spear spinning with deadly grace. Daniel fought beside her, his rifle thundering, his movements sharp and relentless. The alien warriors glanced at him with surprise. They had expected hesitation, weakness, but what they saw was a human cutting down enemies with brutal precision. Each shot was placed with calm, each strike timed with experience earned from years of war. At one point, a raider broke through the line, rushing straight for Serenia. She turned too late, her spear caught in another enemy's armor. The raider raised his blade, but Daniel was already moving. He slammed into the attacker, driving him to the ground, and fired point blank. The alien fell, lifeless, smoke rising from the wound. Serenia looked at him, her emerald eyes wide. For a heartbeat, she saw not just a human mate, but a warrior worthy of her people. The battle raged for hours. Fires lit the night sky. Screams echoed through the streets. But the city did not fall. Daniel fought until his arms ached, until his voice was raw from shouting orders to those around him. He was not only fighting, he was leading. And the Shirathi followed. By dawn, the raiders were driven back. The walls were scarred, the streets bloodied, but the city still stood. The survivors gathered, their eyes fixed on Daniel as much as on their queen. An elder stepped forward, her voice carrying through the square. "This human," she declared, "is no tool. He is a warrior. He is one of us." The crowd roared in agreement. For the first time, Daniel felt the weight of their judgment lift. He had proven himself not by giving children, but by giving his strength. Later, as the fires dimmed and the dead were carried away, Serenia approached him. Her armor was dented, her hair streaked with ash, but her gaze burned brighter than ever. She placed her hand on his shoulder and said quietly, "Perhaps one child can be enough, if that child carries the blood of such a man. Daniel looked at her, exhausted yet unbroken. For the first time, he saw not only a demand in her eyes, but respect. And maybe, just maybe, something more. The battle had ended, but its mark remained on the city. Smoke rose from broken walls, and the cries of the wounded filled the streets. Daniel walked through it all, carrying both exhaustion and pride on his shoulders. He had bled with the Shirathi and stood his ground. For the first time, no one looked at him as a prisoner. They looked at him as a warrior who had saved their home. When he returned to their chamber, the baby stirred in the cradle, unharmed by the chaos outside. Daniel bent low, touching the small hand that reached for him. "I fought for you," he whispered. "And I'll keep fighting until you have a world worth growing in." Serenia entered quietly. She had changed from her armor into a robe, but her presence was still as sharp as a blade. She studied him for a long time before speaking. "You fought well. You fought as if this city were your own." Daniel looked at her, his voice steady though his body was weary. "It is my own. As long as my child breathes here, as long as you stand here, this place is mine too." Her expression softened, though she tried to hide it. She approached the cradle and stared down at the tiny face sleeping peacefully. "I demanded 15, she said quietly, almost as if confessing. "Not because I hated you. Not because I wanted to chain you. I demanded it because I was afraid. I thought only numbers could protect us." Daniel rose slowly, standing beside her. "And now?" he asked. Serenia turned her head toward him. Her fierce emerald eyes glistened, not with fire but with something more fragile. "Now I see what one can mean. One warrior to save a city. One child to remind us we still have a future. Perhaps one is enough, if it is born of strength and not fear." The words struck him deeper than any blade. For the first time since their union, he felt not as if he was living under her command, but standing beside her as an equal. Days later, the council gathered once more. The elders expected reports of numbers and heirs, but instead, they heard a different story. Serenia stood tall before them, her armor polished, her voice clear. "This human is not only my mate," she declared. "He is the shield of our people. He has shown that one can be worth 1,000. Do not measure him by how many children he gives, but by the strength he brings to us all." The hall fell silent. Even the hardest of elders could not ignore the truth of her words. The battle had proven Daniel's worth, and the city's survival was his answer. No one dared question him again. When the council ended, Daniel and Serenia walked together into the light of the alien suns. The people bowed their heads, not in mockery, but in respect. Children ran through the streets, pointing at Daniel with awe. Warriors saluted him as one of their own. That night, as the city settled under the stars, Serenia sat beside him in the quiet chamber. The child slept soundly between them. She spoke in a low voice, not the voice of a queen, but of a woman laying down her burdens. "I will not ask for 15 again," she said. "What I ask now is simpler. Stay, protect us. Be the father this child deserves, and the partner I never thought I would find." Daniel reached for her hand, and for once, she did not resist. He clasped it firmly, his voice steady. "I will, not for treaties, not for councils. For you, for this child. For the life we'll build together." The war had ended, but a new beginning had been born, one built not on demands, but on trust, respect, and the fragile bond between two very different souls. One child, Daniel realized, was not weakness. One child was hope. And sometimes hope was all a world needed to rise again.